So I have Eric Stecker here with McMillan and Defiance. He's been here before. This is the continuation. He's got some really cool products that he's going to show us, and he's going to explain kind of what McMillan and Defiance can do in a sense of explaining the products, because they offer just a large line of actions and stocks that I personally want to know the difference. Some of these I know the difference. Some of these I have no idea. So anyway, Eric, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Eric. How are you?
I'm pretty good, man. So anyway, I see you have a lot of products there in front of you, and I as I was trying to do the intro, I kept looking and I see a lot of different ones. So anyway, if you can, hopefully you'll be able to kind of tell us what the difference is between them and the different purposes.
Well, I have a bad habit on podcasts of going down rabbit holes, and so I put everything out in front of me. So it sort of forced me to talk about products and shooting. And so what I have today is thick with products and shooting. The thing that I've learned over the years has been primarily forward of the firing, the primer. You know, that's where I spent a lot of my time and focus. And so the last several years, you know, I've been with McMillan now for 5, Defiance for 3. I've been trying to understand, you know, I've always heard that these were great products, but I really wanted to understand the reason why, like the genuine reason why. And so we've been wrestling with a lot of things. And one of the things specific to Defiance that came up was the fact that, you know, they can make so many options. So we talk about all these options. Well, the thing that I've learned is that ends up confusing people because they want to figure out, well, which shroud makes the action shoot better, which bolt hand or whatever, what features make it work better. And it's actually that just complicates things. And so I'm working to make things simpler, because the shroud, the aspects of the shroud that are important aren't the outside. So as you know, we'll get into that a little bit. But so I've got some exciting things to talk about with Defiance. I do have 2 new products that Defiance is going to be launching. It's the first time that these products have ever been discussed or mentioned, so we're doing that on your podcast. Thank you for letting us do that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now, it might result in there might be an announcement if this gets published a few weeks from now. There might be an announcement out before that, but this is being said when this is published. This is being said for the first time anywhere about these 2 products. And then I want to go in a bit to what McMillan's been doing lately. I got a little fun announcement about Burger, but we'll get into that later.
Awesome. Good stuff. So
yeah.
well, I'm definitely looking forward to learning about the differences, because I'm going to be honest with you. I know F-class, and I used to hunt in the past, and the knowledge about hunting actions was Remington 700. That's about all I used when I used to hunt. And obviously now I do F-class, which is obviously also a specialized action. So I kind of want to know the different models that you have there, because I honestly don't know the difference.
Well, and it's a common perspective. And so the big thing with Defiance is that at the bottom line is they're bench rest actions that are repeaters. And so they were built by a former bench rest shooter whose bench rest minded approach is throughout the entire line. But the thing that can help people sort out what action to get is that they're basically in 5 usage categories. And so the first usage category that we get into is the ultralight hunter. And so the ultralight hunter is going to be the same configuration as the anti-X, or which is the light hunter, but the ultralight hunter is made of titanium. So you basically have the old reliable, Chevy small block engine, but then you've got your Ferrari. So if somebody wants to go to the grocery store in a Ferrari, this is the action that you want to use. It's as light as anything out there, and they've been tested with the backcountry, federal ammo. Actually, they were tested with the backcountry federal ammo, and they were tested with some proof loads, not loads made by Proof, the barrel maker, but proof loads that are made by people who test actions, and they were proof loads over 100,000 psi. Now, I'm not telling anybody to load them that hot, But my point in saying that is we've tested that action very thoroughly, and it works really well. The difference being, you're paying a little bit more for an exotic material that's going to be much lighter than anything else. And so if cutting toothbrush in half is your thing, then that's the action that you want to go with. So that's category number one.
Those are basically the same action, except one's titanium, one's steel, right?
Yeah, they're identical. So yes.
What's the difference in weight?
Correct. That's a great question. I don't know that off the top of my head. It's my understanding, if my memory serves, these are 20 ounces and these are a bit heavier. I apologize. That's something that I should have off the top of my head, but just from picking them up, they're noticeably different.
Yeah. So the titanium, obviously, I don't know. I'm just off the top of my head thinking, if I was going to build a really lightweight rifle and I just want to get it lighter, then the titanium, the Anti-X, is that what it's called?
Well, actually, so when the Anti-X was created, it was made in response to people asking for titanium actions.
Okay.
And so the guy who designed it, he said, look, I can take steel and make it as light as you'll ever need it to be. And he was very successful. It was the lightest action out there for quite some time. Now the only actions that are lighter are highly skeletonized, but it was the lightest action for quite a long time in steel. Well, when we got involved with Defiance, Bob Beck is a sort of an innovative guy and he's a forward-looking guy, and he said, well, if you've got the lightest design in existence, what happens if you made it with a lighter material? And so that's what we did. So the titanium version is called the TI-X. So it's just TI for titanium X, where the anti is AN big T small I X. So it's it's supposed to be anti-titanium.
Yeah, so one's pro-titanium, the other's anti-titanium.
Right.
Got it.
right.
Okay, so essentially the same action, just different materials.
Correct. Absolutely.
All right. So for example, if I want to build a really lightweight hunting rifle, something that I'm going to carry, this is where the titanium, paying a little extra money, would get me those weight savings. But if I would just want to build a lightweight rifle, maybe that I'm not going to carry as much, or maybe that I want to do some competition with, then the regular Anti-X would be just perfectly fine.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the Anti-X, there is a bit of a different feel between a titanium and a steel action. So if you use other steel actions, then going on a hunt with a steel action, there's going to be a similar crossover. So the titanium is going to feel a little different, but yeah, in every other way, they're the same. It's just a matter of lightness and what you like and what you like to shoot. Now, we definitely recommend that if you're a high volume shooter, if you're a high, predator hunter and things of that nature, the steel is going to feel better over time. Then the titanium, it sort of gets a little gummy and stuff. But as far as how well they work and the fact that they're absolutely safe actions, that's never a problem.
Yeah, I mean, well, you don't want to beat the crap out of a titanium action anyway. Those are, like you said, that's your Ferrari. That's the one that you shoot on the highly specialized hunts. Maybe you go after that on that sheep hunt or whatever. Yeah, that's your titanium. That's your fancy exotic material. If you're just gonna go to need a pickup truck, go get some feed for the cattle, then that you take your Anti-X. Anyway, that's how I'm seeing the difference.
Sure. Well, and
that makes sense.
Yeah, and the difference in weight, there is a difference in weight, but it's not so tremendous that a hunter is disadvantaged for having a lightweight steel action. Now we call it, this is a lightweight steel action. This was the lightest steel action available for quite some time. Now since then a few folks have made one that's more skeletonized, so there are a few that are just an ounce or two slightly lighter, but this is the action that really built a lot of brand reputation for Defiance, because it was both a light action for hunters that wanted light actions and a very capable action that shot really well. And so now we've just added, an option to go with some lighter weight if you should choose to. But then, then the other thing that we do from a category point of view is you have the next step up, which is the medium hunter. And by medium, we don't mean that it's different in how it functions in terms of how well it shoots, but medium in the sense that it has more material. It has like the different slots on the rear scope holder. There are more of them as opposed to just the one on the Anti-X. There's a bar that goes between them, and its purpose is to help things be more rigid, help things be more stiff. From a performance perspective, you're not going to see a huge difference between the two, but like there are folks that hunt senderos, there are folks that hunt prairies that maybe convert and do a lot of coyote hunting with their particular rifle, and they're not as worried about the weight. This little bit more material gives you a bit more rigidity. It just makes it a bit more robust. And if you're not as worried about the weight, that's definitely a solid option within that group. So within the hunting group, you've got your three. You've got your ultralight, your light, and then what we might call a medium weight hunter are the three of these. So that's like the more of the hunting category. Now, admittedly, you could shoot competition with these and you could kill deer with these, but what we're doing is giving people general guidelines to help them understand the choices are actually fairly simple if you understand these basic categories. Then from there, you just choose your personal features.
Yeah, if there's one thing I've learned from my blackjack challenge or my ethical hunter challenge, that every rifle is a hunting rifle.
I mean, if they can send a projectile out with enough energy, then it'll put an animal on the ground. So they all can be. It's just a matter of what you want to. Then it comes down to your other considerations. How far are you going to walk? What else are you going to carry?
Yeah, and I mean, you explained it perfectly, right? If I'm going to build a long range hunting rifle, something that I'm possibly going to, be not carrying as much, I'm going to put a big fat barrel on it. Well, get the beefier action, right? Mm-hmm. Get the, don't, if we're not worried about weight, then yeah, definitely the medium action would be the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What's the next one you got there?
So then now we're getting into competition category. Now, so from what I mean by competition category is these actions are built with, so you have your, what we refer to as our lightweight competition action and then our competition tactical action. And when I say lightweight competition action, what I'm referring to is, I don't know how well it'll show up on this camera, but you've got a full Picatinny rail. So this is very rigid and very stiff, but there's a lightning cut right through the middle. So the action, it has reduced material so you can get it a little bit lighter. There's a space in here between the two. That's a lightning effort as well. There's lightning cuts on the rear. Now this particular action was created upon customer requests who wanted a competition action, but were meeting some of the new weight requirements that are coming to. Some of the competitions have some new weight requirements. Some have had some existing weight requirements. And so this is a very robust tactical competition action that has been lightened. So this is what we would call our light competition action. And then we've got, this is the King Kamehameha of everything. There is no lightning anything. It is the full competition tactical action. As stiff as you can get, as rigid as you can get, also be as heavy as we make. And those are the actions that are great for, your PRS style shooter, anybody that's shooting competition or tactical where weight is not nearly the issue, and you just want something that works really well, which
like F-class.
Yeah, F-class, absolutely. Yeah, that's the action. And we do make, now I say these are bench rest repeaters, and that is true. We do make all these action in single shot, so it is an option. Not very many people get them that way because they prefer the repeater style. But any action we make can be made in a single shot configuration. You just don't open up the magazine bottom, and then now you've got a single shot action with more bedding surface that could be an F-class gun, and that would be a good F-class action, is a full-blown competition action.
Now your TI and your Anti-X, those both come in short and long action, correct?
Correct. Yes. Actually, all of these come in short, medium, a standard medium, and a long. So there was a period of time where Defiance had lengths that weren't standardized, and we also called lengths things that weren't standardized. I won't even confuse anybody with the history of that. Today, Defiance is aligned with industry standards in the sense that what everybody else calls a short, Defiance calls a short. What everybody else is calling a medium, Defiance calls a medium, and of course the long, we always call the long a long. So that's
I'm glad you guys are doing it. It just things just start to get very confusing.
Gosh.
So good.
Yes, yeah.
You know, I'm after doing this ethical hunter challenge, I'm very tempted. As a matter of fact, I'm actually going to go on a hunt very soon. And I haven't been hunting in a very long time. And this hunt just so happens because I won a YouTube challenge. It was a shooting challenge, and the grand prize was a management buck hunt. Okay. So I ended up winning. You know, we shot out. It's La Perla challenge, and I ended up shooting out to past a mile to win this challenge.
Nice.
So I won a management buck, and now I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go. You know, I mean, I don't have a whitetail on my wall, and I thought, you know, this would be a good one. So long story short, when it comes time to select what I'm going to take, well, you're probably not going to be surprised to hear this, but most of what I own is competition rifles.
Yeah. I'm not surprised at all. Not surprised at all.
Luckily, I've been reviewing some rifles lately for something that people can buy off the shelf, you know, that'll do 500 yards. Now, I do not intend to shoot this deer at 500 yards. If they can put it at 80, 100 yards for me, or we can find it at 80, 100 yards, trust me, that's what I would prefer.
Sure.
Now, what I'm getting at is the reason I've been getting rifles or testing rifles that can do 500 yards simply because of the Ethical Hunter Challenge. So I do have some options as to rifles that I can hunt with. I haven't decided. and this is why I'm lately I've been thinking about just what would the perfect hunting rifle look like for me if I was, because I realized that I should own a dedicated hunting rifle for maybe not for me, you know, maybe for my kids, but I should start thinking about having a freaking hunting rifle because, as I said, I'm going to hunt. I don't even have a dedicated hunting rifle. So going through these and talking about them is really helping me understand kind of the options that are out there. Because if, you know, I haven't, the cartridge, there's so many new ones. And, you know, they don't really do many things different than the old things that are available. However, they sound exciting because they're new and shiny.
Sure.
But anyway, that's that. I've really been thinking about a hunting rifle lately.
Well, and that's, I think, one of the challenges of this industry is it's a mature industry. There's not a lot of ways that you can deliver a lot of energy into a small hole to push a projectile out of it. I mean, so you're basically it's a pretty simple system, and the reality of it is all of us manufacturers are constantly bombarded with the idea of new, give me something new, give me something new, give me something new. And so as manufacturers, we're like, okay, well, here's something new, here's something new, here's something new, here's something new. Well, you go long enough, and now the market's like, well, here's all these things that we can choose from. How are they different? Well, I mean, as you know, the system itself, they really aren't that remarkably different. So then what it boils down to is personal taste. Like these two actions, just as an example to what you're talking about, this would be a very difficult choice because one shooter might think to themselves, well, if I'm going to be shooting a lot of rounds, and you know, maybe there's a lot of shooters who are like this. I'm a competition shooter. Maybe I want to use it as a crossover gun, and so the idea of using something a little more robust might be appealing. But then somebody who's, well, I'm just going to walk it around a lot. I'm not going to shoot in competition. So then this is more appealing. Well, the truth of the matter is both of these actions, if you gave them to 10 different guys and you had them use them in both different applications, they're going to find success. And so it makes it really hard for customers to sort out what do I pick, because for some reason people think that the differences are so significant that it's like, well, if I get this one, it's the wrong one. Well, that's really not the case. It really once you understand the notion of premium versus not premium, that's a difference. Once you understand that notion, then once you get into premium, it's tough to choose because of how good and how well they all work in all the different things. You talk about you having all these custom guns. There was a point when I didn't have any hunting. There was a point when I discussed the notion of personal safety, and it occurred to me I didn't own a shotgun. Now I had plenty of pistols, so I felt I was fine. But as far as my home, I didn't own a shotgun. I just never had a need for one. There was never a compelling reason to have one. Now I have a couple more. I have a couple now, but it's really tough, because then when I went to go buy one, I never had a real need for one. I never really knew that I was going to use it all that much. Well, what do I pick? Well, I got something pretty simple and basic, and I'm sure if I was sitting in a room with a bunch of shotgun experts, they'd have told me all the wrong choices that I made. But I guarantee you, if somebody comes through my front door, I got something for them. So they work. Once you decide.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said once you go premium, it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to buy the wrong Lamborghini, right?
Right. Right.
It's once you get to that level, or the wrong Mercedes, or all of the above, right?
Right.
It's like you bought the wrong Bugatti.
Right.
It's like, really? Yeah. But yeah, I see what you're saying. And it's as I discussed back in the day when I used to hunt, the Remington 700 was what everybody did. That's what, and I'm talking 15 years ago, right? 20 years ago. That's what we all did. So Remington 700. If you wanted extra, Hill Country Rifles is just down the road from me. And of course they offered accurizing packages, and so did everybody else. You could take it to Hill Country Rifles, and they would take your Remington 700 and semi-customize it, right? They would, you would end up with a semi-custom rifle. They had accurizing packages. They had, whatever. They would bed it. They would crown the factory barrel. They would things of that nature, right? And you just ended up with a slightly polished Remington 700, but it was still a Remington 700. Now, if you wanted it, which is what I did after I started hunting, and I wanted something really good, I rebarreled I had a 264 Winchester Magnum. I had a rebarrel to 300 Winchester Magnum for elk, Colorado. And then I restocked it with a McMillan thumbhole stock. I put a McMillan's, and I'm telling you, 300 Win Mag with a McMillan stock, dude, that was, and it was a magnificent rifle, but it was still a Remington 700 action, right? But I'm telling you, compared to what everybody else had, I was king of the hill, right?
Right.
Nowadays,
right.
it's went up another layer or two, because now you have, not only do you have premium actions, you have different options within those actions, right? And again, I think once you go to that level, you can't really go wrong.
Well, no, I agree with you. And there's something that I'm eager to talk about today that I was exposed to on your podcast. Well, actually, truthfully, I was exposed to it in bench rest and didn't even understand what I was hearing. And I heard more about it on your podcast, and that got me to dig a little deeper. So one of the things that I struggle with is, it's my opinion. It's just an opinion that people who are really good at making things aren't very good at marketing them. And the reason why I say that is because I know how my brain works. I obsess on what's wrong. I obsess on what we can improve. I obsess on what we can repair. So when somebody asks me what's good about it, everything that's in my brain, I have to set to the side and go, wait a minute, what is good about it? And it's not because I don't believe there's anything good about it. It's because, in my opinion, and I would say that this is deliberate, but it's not. It's been like this my whole life. I focus on the negative. I focus on what we need to fix. And so as a marketer, that makes it hard to say things that are true, but they feel like you're embellishing, and so it makes it hard to talk about stuff in that way. So so with bullets, one of the things that I could hold on to was the science of it. BCs, dispersion. There were scientific measurements. There were things you could measure that helped you understand performance. So I've been working to understand actions in a way that helped me connect with something that was data driven rather than, because so the marketing approach with many rifles, so I've been told by some in the industry and some outside the industry, is you got to find a cool guy. Find a cool guy that looks good in pictures, and that looks good when they're standing on the podium. The guys at the top can win with pretty much any premium product, but you got to find the right guy, and then that's how you sell your product. Well, I'm not good at that. I'm not a cool guy, and I know a lot of cool guys and their friends, but I don't know how to leverage that into marketing. So my thing is data, and so I've been working to try to figure that out. Well, I've met someone. His name is Taylor Stratton, and he is at Stratton. You can find him at SC Rifles. And what Taylor's been up to, and this is stuff you'll be very familiar with, is he's been studying actions for several years and focused exclusively on timing and tuning, focusing exclusively on ignition control systems. And so when we met Taylor, Taylor was talking about a lot of things I didn't understand. And so I asked a lot of questions, and I got better informed enough to be able to talk to him about what all this means. And what Taylor has helped us understand is that Defiance and a few other actions, a few other brands, were designed in a way that allows for timing and tuning to be maximized, to be optimized. And that was a very encouraging thing to hear. I was like, okay, well, that's great, but can we identify it? Can we measure it? Well, he came up with a system to measure it. And anybody who knows Taylor knows he's extraordinarily detail oriented. And so he spent a lot of years chasing this and trying to figure out what he could measure to actually discern action performance from one action to another. Because his interest, now to be clear, his interest was never brand specific. He just wanted to get the most out of any given action. So every action that he got, he'd put it through this testing procedure, and then he'd do his modifications to it. Just sort of like you were talking about, taking the 700 and accurizing it. Well, he's taken premium actions, and he feels that there's a particular timing and tuning objective that should be achieved for maximum potential. And so he's got a measure of merit that's a real thing. And so we can test these, or he can test these actions to give us an understanding of how they perform in his tests. And I was very excited to learn that Defiance is among the top, to get the top results among the various different brands that he's tested. And in fact, there's only a couple that can accomplish that. And that's encouraging because just because we're all in competition with each other, I won't mention the others, but I will say this about them. They come from folks that came from bench rest, or that are bench rest folks. And it's something, and that's where, so I go back to what I was talking about that I heard long ago. I remember when Tony was talking to Walt about something to do with how the shroud, or the fire control, how it would sit still when you close it, and then when you pull the trigger, it doesn't jump. And I remembered them talking about all that back then. But back then, Walt set up my actions. Walt set up my guns. I didn't, I just shot, because I was a snot-nosed kid and I didn't know any better. And Walt was the legend expert. So of course he set my stuff up. So I didn't know what that all meant, and I didn't worry about it too much. But that's the kinds of actions that have that kind of capability, where they're designed in a way that allows for them to be timed and tuned effectively. So that was extraordinarily good news to hear for me, because it helps me understand why Defiance is significant as a brand. And so now that's something that I can talk about. I can talk about data and facts and that kind of stuff. And so,
well, as you may or may not know, we sell shrouds on our we machine shrouds that people can buy for their Remington 700s, because that is a key part of the action that everybody overlooks. Like what I'm talking about, where they were accurate rifle, and they would always go from the bolt forward, right? They would say, well, they would recut the threads, they would square up the action, they would do everything to the front of the action, but never to the back, which is what really sets off the primer, right? And I mean, as you know, Speedy's my mentor, and I've been hearing about timing and ignition for over a decade from him, and I learned that from him back in like 2010, 2011. So people they've been wondering how my guns shoot so good. Yeah. But people always wonder why my guns would shoot so good, right? And I would concentrate on that. Yeah, obviously chambering a really good barrel would help, but if you get the timing and ignition and all that stuff correct, my goodness, it's like a different beast. And that's why fast forward over a decade, and Speedy and us teamed up, and we finally released his design to the masses. So if you own a Remington 700, people will, and they ask, well, how much improvement am I going to see? Well, that's one of those things that it's really hard to measure it, but if excuse me, the best case scenario is you will see no improvement. That means your shroud, your rifle's been working perfectly fine. Right now, it's hard to measure, but it's one of those things that if you are having an issue, you will see a vast improvement in the performance, because the issue is your firing pin is sticking, it's dragging, it's very inconsistent. More likely you're having split groups, and you're pulling your hair out, right? A simple bolt shroud will fix that, right? Beyond that, maybe you don't have a very good barrel on your rifle. That's different, right? That's a whole different thing. But it'll cure so many issues that you may be having. And again, timing and ignition is big. Jim Borden's been on here talking about it. Speedy's been talking about it. So I can probably imagine some of the other actions that are that are doing well. But it's it's great that this is spreading. Because we have talked about custom actions that not all of them are good. And trust me, we caught a little. I personally caught a little bit of backfire because of it. A little bit of flack, but hey, man, I'm not here to blow smoke up anybody's behind. It is what it is. I am, to this day, still in the search of how do I get better, and how do others get better, because it's amazing. And I'm going off on a tangent here, so bear with me a little bit, but it's amazing to see how good new shooters can get nowadays in F-class. They can show up one or two matches later, they're shooting really high scores that took me years to shoot. And that's because they can simply go and buy an action off the shelf that is it's good to go. They can buy some of the best barrels that have ever been made. They're offered to anybody, right?
Right.
Bullets, Burger bullets, brass, they get Lapua brass, and there's other really good manufacturers out there nowadays. Like, the entire game has been elevated, right? And now that we're talking about, listen, back in the day, the actions were so crooked that nobody cared. Nobody cared about the ignition, because it's like, look how crooked this is, right? That's what they were focused. Now they're so straight and everything's so perfect that now we're like, how do we shrink the groups? Back then we're trying to get sub MOA groups. Now we're trying to get sub half MOA. Right. And I think I'm just super excited about about where we're at and where we're going with this stuff.
Yeah, and an aspect of that I am excited about is because there are enough manufacturers that understand this timing and tuning situation at a very high level. There are things like one of the things that I've heard from time to time is that, well, in modern day, all CMC machines are all very good. They all hold very tight tolerance. Okay, I'll accept that on the surface. I don't have any evidence, but I'll just accept it because I can see how those things could be true. The thing that is also true is it still depends on what you do with it. All pianos may be the same, but some people play it one way, some people play it another. Well, there are things that we know now about how to move metal so that it stays straight, how to affect things so that you don't get warping and twisting. So yeah, I'm echoing what you said, is that those who know how to do it and those who apply a very deliberate approach, it's not that you have the machine, it's that you know how to play it, you know how to use it, who apply a very deliberate approach. And it's one of the things, these folks that are doing this at a very high level, it's a myriad of things, because it's not just playing the piano very well, it's structuring the song. So all of these things, timing is a relationship of all these different things. And I'm not going to go way too deep into it, because I know this is something that you and Speedy and Borden have covered extensively, but I'll just share for our purposes that it takes so much more than just having a good machine. You have to know where to put everything. You have to know when you change something slightly, you have to be aware that that's going to affect a lot of other stuff. And the thing to me that is the most significant for me, this is me personally, is the ability to be able to identify it through testing. And so now we're, through our own testing, we are confident that what we're seeing is applicable to, and here's the key thing, and you've already mentioned it, it affects your dispersion and it affects your flyers. If you can get an action that comes timed and tuned, now what we're working to do is we're working with Taylor Stratton. So he's acting as like an independent third party in terms of we're sending him the stuff and then he's testing it and then he's telling us what the results are, so that we can make sure that we're maintaining the highest level of timing and tuning performance straight out of the box. So that's really what we're going for, is to have the highest timing and tuning straight out of the box. Now, I am aware that there are things that can be done, like shroud, a customized shroud. There are things that can be done. Like there's another guy who's taken Defiance actions, and he's actually like fluting the firing pin because he has a particular approach that he thinks works very well for timing and tuning. And I don't know that it doesn't or it does. They're happy with their results. The point I'm trying to make is there are a lot of ways to skin this cat if you know how to do it, but you have to do it well and you have to do it in a certain way. And so at Defiance, we're working to get as close as we can to out of the box, but we understand that there are things that can be done to go even further, but you have to have a way to check it. And checking it through dispersion or through flyers is a way to do it, but it takes a lot of samples, because not only that,
there's a lot of variables, right?
Oh, that's what the barrel, the load,
the bullet, shoot! All of a sudden, what caused that groove? Was it the action, right? Or was it a bad bullet, or No, I trust me. This is where I live, right? And right. When you have bad results, it's like, what did it, right? It's you can try to pinpoint it and yeah. So I assume you guys have a different testing mechanism.
Yeah, well, it's Taylor's test. It's what he's been doing. Now, this is what Taylor's been doing for years, and it tests the action. It's not shooting at the target. So it tests characteristics of the action. So it's something that you can. It's more black and white than what you might get over the course of things. And so now, keeping in mind, this is what we're doing. This is our approach. We've seen this work. It'd be correlatable to other things. There is a range. They once you cross a particular threshold, he's equated it to consistent success on the target, but there is a range that it can fall in. So we're learning more about it all the time. And I would definitely encourage anybody who are curious about what he's up to, that SC Rifles. Yeah, scrifles.com is where he's at, for anybody who wants to look into that and see what he's up to. But yeah, so we're
Maybe we put a Cortina precision bolt shroud on a Defiance and see how it does.
See how it goes. See how it tests. I'd be happy.
Maybe
to
that's
do that.
maybe that's the perfect match. I don't know.
Could be.
But you know,
I would.
After Speedy, I've had custom bolt shrouds on my rifle. You know, custom to me, right? Because couldn't buy them.
Sure.
He taught me how to make custom bolt shrouds. So I've been running custom bolt shrouds for over a decade. Let me tell you what the key was, or the difficult part was, is making them look identical to the factory one, right? Because
right.
the difference are internal. So the key was, how do you have a better system, but that looks like everything else? Otherwise, they'll spot it, right? And
they know, right?
If you're familiar with F-Class, you know, and Benchers, there's a lot of that going on where they'll figure something out, but they go, I can't let them know, right? Because you're trying to get an advantage, and people will always catch up to whatever the latest thing is. You're just trying to stay ahead of them for as long as you can. The funny part is, I've thought about this, is because we hide stuff in plain sight. I've oftentimes been driving and start thinking of the possibility that I'm the last one to actually do it, but because we're all hiding it,
right? Yeah,
I may be the last one to do it. Exactly, right? So it's like
great.
that's
right.
also a possibility. So anyway, it's a fun thing to think about, but also it's the continued chase of perfection. Is, you know, Speedy at the tech driver shot a 675 thousandths aggregate at 300 meters in the group.
Oh my gosh.
Which translates into ag 0.675 at 300 meters.
Oh, what's that? That's like a one. That's a zero ag, or
I broke it down into 0.2 MOA.
0.2. Okay.
0.2. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wow. That's at
now,
300 yards. That's phenomenal.
300 meters, which is
300
like 330 yards.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's another 30 yards.
That's really hard.
But the point is, I asked him, I had him here on the podcast, and I said, are you happy with that ag? And he goes, no, because there was that one group, you know, there was that one shot. And it's the continued chase of perfection, and perfection would be zero, right? All zeros, which, my goodness. And, you know, if people were doing it at 100, all zeros as zero ag, now they'd want to do it at 200 and 300. And, you know, of course, us 1,000-yard guys would be like, you know, how do we do that? And it's just never ending thing, right? But it's exciting.
Yeah. It's just like, you know, like F1 racing, you know, when you come up with something that makes you a 10th faster, you know, you don't want the other cars to catch you. So at that level, I mean, I believe me, I get it, because I spent a lot of time at that level. At that level, you're looking for everything you possibly can, because it's so competitive. It's just so competitive.
So we're making these new V3 tuners that we just released.
Cool.
These work with a suppressor. They work with a brake. They work with just about anything, rimfires, anything. But you know, it's a 2-piece component, and I had a very specific way in which I wanted it made, and that is just for tolerance purposes. And that was when we had this meeting about how it's being made, and some of the things that I just could not sacrifice on, and one of those things, and it was mainly one of the adapters that I wanted it to be as perfect as possible. We checked it on the CMM. I wanted it just the flatness, perpendicularity. I wanted all that as close to zero as possible. Well, that resulted in additional machine time, right? And of course, the machinists are saying, well, yeah, but you know, you're gaining a 1/10,000th of an inch, but it's eating up another 30 seconds per part or whatever. And I said, now it may not sound like a lot, right? But when you start making hundreds, possibly thousands of them, it's a long time, right? Now you're adding, for every 1,000 parts, you're adding 500 minutes. That is a long time. In machine time, that is an eternity.
Right.
And I said, I don't care. It needs to be done this way. And I will sacrifice that for 1/10,000th of an inch better. Now, time equals money, right? And so this decision that I'm making could equal, well, it does equal many thousands of dollars over the life of this product. Every time we make it, it's costing an additional $3-4 or whatever, right? I said, I don't care. Well, we finally settled on that being the process of how that's how it's going to get made, or that feature needs to be made that way, right? Okay. Once we finally got past the fine, that's how we're going to do it. My machinist came in one day, super excited. He goes, hey, I was driving and I figured out how we can do that and cut the machine time even more than what it cost us to do that. And he was able to do it. And I said,
nice.
Awesome. So now we have the best of both worlds, right? But it's some things you just could not sacrifice some things, right? And for me, that 1/10,000th of an inch was, in the precision machining world, that's a mile sometimes, But anyway, it's just, and I understand kind of like you're talking about, sometimes just things that you're not willing to compromise on. And yeah, they result in longer machine time or whatever. But after you say, this is how we're doing it, then there's always a way to figure out, well, maybe if we hold it different, maybe we do this, maybe we do that. And then it ends up working out at the end of the day.
Well, one thing I've heard that speaks to that is that rule of 2 out of 3, good, fast, or cheap. You can get 2 of them, but you can't get 3 of them. And, and that's one of the things that I've been looking at lately when we've been getting into this timing and tuning is that, and actually this has more to do with McMillan than it does with Defiance specifically, but in the evolution of the sport, we've got this, we've got what we're talking about where you have a drive toward precision and a drive towards performance. But then there's also a drive, and separate from what you were talking about, but there's also a motivation to make things simpler and cheaper. And, so, and this, like I said, it has more to do with McMillan because we'll get into some of the stock aspects of that in a minute, but it's they're choosing methods that are more advanced because they shortcut some things to allow for things to happen that are faster, but the thing they don't recognize what they're trading away. And so folks like you that are look, we're focused on precision. This is the only thing that matters. We're constantly looking for things that will make stuff more efficient as long as it's the same or better. And I know you've heard that a lot of times before. It's as long as it's the same or better. So it can't get any worse. And that's a key commitment is when you've achieved a certain level of performance or you've achieved a certain target on precision, you don't compromise that. And that's, and now you can find things just like you did that allows you to get that same thing using a different approach. Cause there's being innovative and being creative is, part of being human. So that's certainly possible, but it's important for people to be careful that sometimes the thing that comes out that's the simpler thing or we can make it faster now and it's cheaper, you got to be a little nervous about that. And I'm not suggesting you're offering your tuner a cheaper. I'm trying to disconnect those two things clearly, but there's definitely there are a lot of actions right now that are out in the community that are made that look like actions, but when you actually put them through the rigors of what it takes to have true performance, that true tight dispersion minimizing flyers, they might look like actions, but they don't act like premium actions. And that's a big thing that we're working on right now. So yeah,
it's at some point, I think, cause you can go buy a factory rifle. They guarantee sub 1 MOA, right? Well, what does that mean? Well, typically, actually, as far as I know, 3-shot groups, 100 yards with premium ammunition. Okay. So, most anything can pass that nowadays, right? It's 1 inch, 1 MOA at 100 yards is not that difficult.
Especially
nowadays,
3 shots. Right? Yeah. Especially 3 shots.
Correct.
You can get lucky with 3 shots.
Correct. Now, 3 shots is not, like you said, you can get lucky. We know that. but then, I mean, you have some rifles that are shooting, let's just say 1-inch groups at 100 yards, right? And that's the occasional group. Most times it's above that, right? Mm-hmm. And then you go into the next level where you have rifles that shoot 1-inch groups, but that's also rarely, because most of the time they shoot around 3/4 or less, right? And then you have the rifles that sometimes shoot 3/4, but the majority of the time they're under half MOA, right? And then there's overlap, but then you have, those that rarely do it and those that mostly do it. And then I'm just wondering if one day we're going to get to the point where maybe we start classifying actions like almost like quarter-mile cars, right? That's a 10-second car. That's a 9-second car. You don't really care about the shape or the horsepower. You just know how long does it take for this car to get from here to there, right?
Right.
And I wonder if there's one day going to be actions that are systems that are classified in that manner. I want a zero
gun.
It.
Yeah, I would love it, because then it gives us a solid objective to go for. You know what I mean?
Correct.
A true, because a lot of stuff can be hard to define, especially when you get down into the really tight stuff. Now, I believe in all of it. I think that it's a worthy pursuit, and I do believe that as time goes on, I think what we saw in long range hunting talks to that to some degree. So like at one point, taking a shot past 300 yards was considered by most active hunters to be unethical. And part of that was because the equipment of the day wasn't capable of the kind of precision that
the equipment and the knowledge that was available.
Well, yeah, all
everything.
of it. Everything. It was inappropriate as a human being. It was a moral question for you to use the systems available then to do that kind of thing. And now, I mean, a 300-yard kill shot on an animal right now is, in everybody's different, but in many cases, many hunters would probably call that a chip shot.
I think 300, based on what I've read on the comment section with my ethical hunter challenge, most would consider 300 and in an ethical shot, right?
Yeah.
Where back in the day when I was hunting, anything past 100 was iffy, right? Because it was for most of us, and I was included in that group. After 100 yards, we didn't know what would happen. And why? Because most shooting ranges only had 100 yards. Most of what I had ever done was 100 yards. The deer feeder was always set at 100 yards. Everything was 100 yards because that's what we knew. And at 101 yards, I didn't know what would happen. I mean, obviously,
right.
We have a pretty good idea, right? But
sure.
I remember sitting in a restaurant one time, and I listened to the guys, the table over. It was during hunting season, and they were discussing how this one hunter had seen a deer that he'd been wanting to take, but it was at 200 yards. And the other guys are like, well, you should have shot it. And he's like, I just don't know where to hold. I've never shot that far. And the other one goes, oh, well, just hold the top of the back. And the other one said, no, you don't. There was like 4 hunters, and none of them could agree or where to hold. Yeah. Of course, the only difference is the other guys was, oh, you should have shot at it. And but they could, 3 of them could agree that he should have shot, but none of them could agree on where to hold. Right. Of course, by the time I was already into long range shooting, and I pulled up my ballistic app right quick, and I realized, I mean, he could have just held it on, just maybe high shoulder, it would have been fine. Mm-hmm. But they didn't know. And the fact that he passed up on this deer that they'd been chasing for a long time, simply because it was 100 yards farther, it was at 200 yards. Okay. Nowadays, most people know. And if you've never done it, don't do it. But I'm kind of agree with the guy that didn't take the shot, because that 200 number may mean different numbers for different people, right? It may mean 300, sure. 400. And if you've never done it, I think the safe thing to do is just don't shoot. But for me, thinking back, that for him 200 yards was just out of reach, Right. Nowadays, I don't think that's very common for people to say that they can't shoot 200 yards. It's just things have changed. It's what I'm getting at. The knowledge, the equipment, everything.
The way that we always looked at it when Berger was in that debate, because that was pretty hot and heavy for a while there. The way that we always looked at it is, if you've made the shot numerous times before, then you're fine. So there are shooters who spend all year shooting at a target at 1,000 yards. They know they can hit that target within a relatively small area over and over again under certain conditions. Now, I'm not saying that they have to go hunt at 1,000 yards, but if they've got an 800-yard shot, they should be aware enough of what the situation is to say, oh, that's a shot I can make, and then make it. Our thing
did a
was
podcast with. Sorry,
it should never be. It should never be your first shot. If it's the first time you've ever shot at 300 yards, then that shouldn't be your shot. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I did a podcast with Ron Spomer, and we discussed this very topic. And what I typically suggest to people is, listen, if you shoot at 1,000 yards all the time, maybe 500 is what you shoot comfortably, right? Because 50% of what you practice all the time is probably a chip shot, right? If you do 500 all the time, maybe you can do 250 to 300, maybe not 500.
Okay.
And I tell you what, the more you shoot, and you've done a lot of shooting, the more you realize how those flyers can happen at any time, right?
Oh,
and even at 500, all of a sudden you're shooting, and you're just pounding that X-ring, and all of a sudden there's that shot that goes out there that way, and you go, where did that come from, right? Now, that could also happen during hunting, right? And that's the thing that concerns me. And but anyway, I think obviously practice. Yeah. The more you practice, the more you will know what your limit is, Yeah. And because then conditions can dictate that as well.
Oh yeah.
If it's super mega windy, it's not going to be, your range is going to definitely change.
Sure. And some I've heard talk about the way the animal's facing. So even if everything
absolutely.
else is perfect, but the animal's wrong, so if you feel wrong about the shot, then you should probably not shoot it. Yeah. But
absolutely.
It's an evolving debate because of how the work that's been done in the world of precision has evolved. So
that's what makes it a debate, that everybody has a different limit or different level of knowledge, right? And that's what makes it a debate. Like precisely what was happening in that restaurant that day. They were having a debate because you should have shot. And he's like, no, I've never done that. And he goes, oh, but it's not that far. And blah, whatever.
Right.
So, like I said, I had a thumbhole McMillan stock on my rifle. What are the different options that shooters have available to them?
Well, on the McMillan stocks, now one of the things that's important to understand about McMillan is that these are stocks that were made for combat. And so the way that the process through which McMillan, Gail McMillan decided to make stocks was he wanted to figure out how to make stocks that would hold up to combat and of course he's a bench rest shooter, would also be quality bench rest material. And so the system that he came up with incorporates a hard epoxy shell done a particular way, and an epoxy core that's it's a different material. It's more of a flexible, and so you get a combination between rigid and soft. And so Gail designed in recoil and vibration absorption in stocks that were being made 50 years ago. So the notion that this is something that people are talking about now sort of is a little funny to us, because that's what we've been doing all along. And there's another thing that's really important about McMillan that people need to understand. It's that it's an entirely wet process. And okay, big deal, what does that mean? Well, when you make a stock that's an entirely wet process, what you're doing is all stocks, there's a couple that aren't, but for the most part, most commonly known stocks are made using a mold that comes in two halves. And so you put the material down inside the mold, and then you put those two halves together, and then something happens, and then you end up with your stock. Well, the way McMillan was designed many, many years ago, and this isn't an old way, it's just a good way, is they do a wet process. So when the material, the carbon fiber material that acts as the structure of the stock, is wrapped around. Because it's wet, everything comes together and then becomes one solid shell. That's incredibly important, that the stock consists of one solid shell. And another alternative method that's used, that's meant to be cheaper and simpler and faster, is to use a product called pre-preg. And what pre-preg is, I don't know if you can see it real well, but this particular stock has see-through carbon fiber, meaning you can see the carbon fiber mesh that is used as the structure aspect of this stock. Pre-preg is the same stuff. Like, we get it just as the material, and then we put the wet epoxy mixture on it directly. Pre-preg comes with the epoxy already in the material, so there's no application of additional epoxy. And so you put down this pre-preg, and it's like in pieces, and then those pieces then get put into either an oven or something that activates the pre-existing epoxy within those things, and then that you eventually get your shell. Well, the reality, it's much faster, it's much simpler, it's much cheaper, but the problem with those is now you're basically dealing with a material that's been given to you by some entity that is making lots of things for lots of products. It doesn't know that it's making it for a stock. And so what methods that they use to control that mixture is outside the control of the stock manufacturer. So they get what they get. Well, then they get what they get, and then they put it down in basically sheets. Well, those sheets, I won't get into the weeds of it, but there's a difference between laying down sheets with pre-preg and laying down the material on a flat that's been wetted with the epoxy and laying it down. It's the notion. Now, this is different because everything we do at vast majority of what we do at McMillan is hand done. So this is all done by hand. There's no machine that does it. So it's not that the machines are the same, but how you use the machine is different. In this case, it's the whole process. We use a process that was proven to be effective for combat, and we applied that same process to hunting stocks, to bench rest stocks, to competition stocks. It already has vibration absorption designed into it. It's had that for decades. So all of the things that are being talked, we hear talked. That's one of the reasons why I have a tendency to get frustrated sometimes, is because we hear people talking about, oh, this is so exciting, this is so exciting. It's like, well, we gave up on that 30 years ago. Now, not me personally, but McMillan gave up on that concept a long time ago before it even got attractive again, because it doesn't make the same product. It doesn't produce the same results. And the fact that McMillan offers a lifetime guarantee, we get people who call us up, and a lot of stocks are a little bit like Louis Vuitton purses. They got little names and such on them. You don't see that on McMillan's. But so the stocks that don't, we get a lot of calls, and people say, hey, I've got this stock, it's broken, will you guys fix it? And then we'll look at it, we'll say, we're sorry, but it's not a McMillan, it's somebody else's. And at times we'll get those, they'll call us back and they'll say, yeah, well, they won't work on it. Can you fix it? As a stock maker, can you fix it? And sometimes we can help them out and sometimes we don't. The point is, we see what stocks we get because we have a lifetime guarantee, and we see what breaks. We also see what other stocks break, we see why and we hear about it. And it just, to me, it's difficult for me to process how people are so excited about the performance that they get in some of these other stocks. Now, if it feels weird, that's one thing. But for somebody to say that another stock brand is a better stock, I'd like to challenge that, because so basically what I'm trying to say is there's more to McMillan's than how they look, and that's that soul of a combat rifle is really what that's all about. Now, to move on from that, another thing that some people talk about related to McMillan is it's complicated to order. Well, we've got some great tools for that. Both McMillan and Defiance have tools on their website where you start at a very entry level, either at the cartridge or at some point you start at a basic level, and you tell it what you're trying to do, and then it'll tell you, well, based on that, here are all your choices, and then you choose that one. Well, as you step through each choice, it limits your next choice to only those choices that apply to that particular series of choices. So you can use these tools on the website to get down to what you need very quickly and easily. Another thing is McMillan stocks are tailored. It's extremely important to understand how tightly we inlet all of our features to precisely what the action is going to end up being. Now, that's important because a lot of other stock manufacturers, they use more general approaches. Now, that's why we ask so many questions. And when people don't know what their gear is and they tell us that they have a barrel cylinder that's so long and it actually turns out it's different, and they see a gap, well, that gap's not there because McMillan made something wrong. That gap is there because there's been some communication confusion on what the person actually has. And that's why at times we'll ask people to send in their stuff, because if we're picking up on the fact that somebody's confused about what they have, we can make it super simple. Just send it to us. We'll tailor it to precisely your individual barreled action. I mean, that's a service we provide. My point being, we have solutions for things that people think are complicated. And the most important aspect of that is I want people to understand there are all of those choices when you do get your stock made, because there are that many things that you can get done on your stock. Now, if you're like, well, I don't want all these choices, that's fine too. We do spec builds. You can go on our online store and find finished stocks ready to go that have all the details. And the one thing I'll point out about our online store is the stocks that you see in the picture on McMillan's online store is the actual stock. It's not a representation of, and you can get it in a different color. It's the literal stock. And the reason why we do that, that's very important, is because so many people are particular about the color. The color is by far the most complicated. Everything else is pretty much based on what other stuff you picked. If you know what your action is, you know what your barrel is, then it's just an answer. Color, boy, people really hem and haw over color. So if you look on our online store,
I mean, that's I mean, how many, buying a new car, that's part of the, that's
right.
I haven't bought a new car in a long time. I think I've only bought 2 in my entire life. And where I got hung up was at the color.
That's why we take the picture every time. A lot of online stores, they have like, well, this is the model and it comes in, here are some color swatches. McMillan's store is dedicated to showing you the picture of the actual stock that you will get, because we know how people are. Because all day long it's now I'm going to ask you the hardest question you'll ever answer: what color? And that's usually where people get hung up. But so all those complications, all those questions as far as what we want to do are there for a reason. If you know what you have, we can quickly get you what you need. You can call in and do it. You can go online and go through that process. But all of those questions are important because they make sure that your stock is precise. And I'll go into one last thing on the stock that's really important. So another thing that's getting talked about a lot is bedding blocks and mini chassis and all this kind of stuff. And so I want people to understand that, here, this is a new solution to a new problem. Actually, it's not. It's something that's been around for a very long time, in the sense that there is a need to prevent material crush within synthetic stocks. And so many years ago, McMillan came up with using, or at least this is how they did it. There might have been others that did it. I don't want to say that they invented it, but they started using it and haven't looked back since, is precision inlet pillars. And what precision inlet pillars are is they're basically the most effective the small bedding block you could ever have, because they're round cylinders, so you don't have to worry about alignment. That's one of the issues of mini chassis and bedding blocks, is you got to worry about alignment. They're round cylinders that are put into round holes that are placed in CNC positioned locations. And then after they're put in, the entire inlet is milled with them in. So the inlet that's created is created in the pillar. It's not something you put in after the fact. The inlet is created while the pillar is already there. So McMillan has had a crush solution that works extraordinarily well. You don't have to worry about alignment. You don't have to worry about separation. You don't have to worry about one of the things that comes up with these mini chassis and these bedding blocks inside synthetic stocks is that, if one of those things sits in a hot car for a long time, the way that they're set up, you can actually get separation because of how those materials react to each other because they're different materials. Well, that doesn't happen with these kinds of situations. So, these things are being pitched as these, innovative solutions to new problems. They're not. They're ways to getting around how to do something right. And so you can make something cheaper, you can make it faster. And we're looking at doing it only because so many customers are asking about it. So we're looking at it, but there's not much out there that's super exciting. There's a few things that we're playing with, but when you talk about a round precision inlet pillar and what it does, what solutions it provides, and then you look at what these bedding blocks and mini chassis are doing, it's like, well, I'm not sure why we're going backwards, but if that's what you want, customers may not always be right, but they sure are important to listen to. So if a bunch of customers want mini chassis and bedding blocks, we'll do it, but we'll have to figure out how to do it in a way that's the same or better. And so far we haven't found it because it's not as straightforward as some might offer. So that's another McMillan thing. But
yeah,
now
I understand. Yeah, pillar's been around, and that's one of the things that, like I talked about accurizing a Rem 700. It was glass bedding and pillar bedding, but if you glass bed and not pillar bed, you're not really getting anything. But if you pillar bed and not glass bed, you're already ahead of the game. You follow what I'm saying? If you're going to skip one, you skip the glass bedding, but you can't skip the pillar bedding.
I believe that. Now, I've, in my process of learning, because of how I was more familiar with the bullet side of things than this rifle stock and action side of things, I've been listening to what people have said regarding bedding. And the thing that I am clearly coming to understand is it ends up being situational with the McMillan. You don't have to. You could put the action right in the stock and shoot it and see how it works. It will work very well. There are a number of folks who like to spot bed it. They sped it up by the lug, where they just want to tighten that section up a little bit, and okay, no problem. It will still shoot very well. And then there are those who are full bedding it. And being a bench rest shooter, full bed was something you did religiously. So I don't see any problem with the full bedding. The thing that I hope people understand is if you want a stock that you can drop an action in and start shooting it right away, don't think of McMillan as not being an option because it's not a chassis. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about the benefit of chassis over stocks. Now, I get the attachment aspect of it. Chassis have the ability to hang stuff off of them like nobody else's. We're looking at how to do that, but that's a whole nother animal. But when it comes to just dropping a barreled action into a chassis or a stock, that specifically, not all of the other accessories that can go on a chassis, that specifically, there is no discernible difference between the benefit of a drop-in ready chassis and a McMillan precision inlet stock. The performance you'll get will be fairly similar, and I can support that with the evidence that on the competition level, like in PRS and such, it's more common to bed chassis now because they're I guess zero shift, and they're having problems that they think are because of that interaction between those two surfaces isn't as good as that whole drop-in ready thing might suppose. And maybe that could be just purely at the competition level because those guys are really going after it. So I just want people to understand, if you've got it in your brain because somebody told you that you can't drop a barreled action into a McMillan stock, that's incorrect. You absolutely can. Now, should you bet it? You could. It's a variable control. If you want to, it could certainly make it better. Or it could certainly make it have less variability, potentially. But I would encourage anybody, the greatest way to test this, if you're going to get a McMillan stock and you already know you're going to bet it, If you have the opportunity to do this, not everybody's set up this way, but if you have the opportunity, just drop it in the stock and see how it shoots, just out of curiosity, and then go get it bedded and then shoot it again. I'm comfortable that you'll find the difference will not be so much so that you're like, boy, really glad I did that. You know what I mean? It won't be that. Now you always tightening up everything you can, in my opinion, is a worthy pursuit. If for no other reason than to make you a better shooter. I think shooters that shoot better precision learn more when they miss than shooters that have poor precision. I think they can wander in the dark for a long time if they don't focus on precision. So
I think that's why I've learned so much, because I've missed a lot.
Right. Wealth of knowledge between the two of us.
I tell you. All right, Eric, you had some special announcements. Can we see that now, please?
Yeah, actually, we can. Before we get into that, I'll get right into that. But one thing I do want to talk about is I was talking earlier about how Defiance has these 5 basically purposed groups that you can think of. The hunting group and the competition group. Then I talked about how there's a 6th specialty group, and what I refer to is, like, we make one action that comes with a 3-position safety. That's a different type of category. And then this is our CRF action. It's controlled round feed. And this controlled round feed, like, we used to make a controlled round feed that was similar to a Mauser. This one's a bit different in the sense that it also does push feed. So if you do need to single feed it, this one will handle that. So a lot of controlled round feeds, you have to feed through the magazine, or you'd have to feed it from the bottom. You can't feed it just single round. This one you can. So that's another thing Defiance is working into, is these sort of specialized actions that have purposes where, I don't expect this is going to be a really huge popular one, but the people who like that's a big deal. So that brings us to the new announcements, and this is another one that's going to be exciting to certain people and not so big a deal to others. Defiance is coming out with this first field strippable no tool bolt, and so it's simply you just push on the handle and or push the button, and this is the shroud's made purposefully for this setup. And you take your bolt apart, get your piece of primer out of there, or whatever's got you gummed up, and make it so you can't work it. And then you screw it back in and get it past the detent, and you're back in business. And so now the interesting thing about this is we sent these bolts to Taylor Stratton, the guy who I was talking about earlier, who's doing the testing on the timing and tuning. And the interesting thing about this is he reported that based on his testing, this setup tested closer to being fully timed and tuned than any setup that he had ever received before of any brand, including Defiance's. Which is interesting because, you were talking about shrouds, being a big part of it. Well, this is a heavily engineered shroud, So now we weren't working to achieve an ignition control as the primary objective of this. People were asking for a no tool field strippable bolt. That's what the request was. So that's what we made, was a no tool field strippable bolt. It was just interesting that when you put so much emphasis on this area, the results in relation to timing and tuning were really remarkable. So that was an interesting
Can they
thing.
retrofit their current Defiance bolts with that shroud?
You can get the shroud and put it on an existing Defiance bolt. Yes. That will work.
Very nice.
So that's now. So by the time this airs, This will probably be, so what I paused on is you might not be able to get that literally today, like the day we're filming this, but by the time this airs, I'm confident that this will already be on the website. So, or at least available through, making a phone call. But yeah,
Very nice.
we have several of them ready to go. And so it's not one of these things where we're talking about it and then in 6 months we might have the first one.
like most of what happens at SHOT
Right.
Show.
Of everything. Yeah. This is a completed project. So this is ready to go. We're being smarter about how we announce things. And instead of talking about it 3 months before we even see the first one finished. So
cool.
So that's the first one.
And you had a separate announcement?
Well, so this is another product that we're making at Defiance that will simplify things for a lot of people. This is a deviant action. It will be guaranteed headspace, but this action is the action that we have created specifically for PRS shooting. Now, at the moment, this action does not have a name. At the time of this recording, this action does not have a name because we've picked a few different names that we found. I don't know if you're familiar with the headaches of trademark law. They're getting to the point now where they're trying to figure out how to change the laws because basically every usable word is taken by somebody, and there's so many people that now there's enough of them doing things that are similar that it's a real quagmire. So we didn't have a name for this action, or we had a couple different names for these actions, and we weren't allowed to use them. I tried to work something else out, didn't go the way that I had hoped. So
can we hear the names that you had, or?
Oh yeah, well I'll tell you. One of them was the Maximus.
Okay.
Maximus.
Okay. I can see why that didn't fly.
well, it's actually there. It turns out that there is a company that makes something. There's a Maximus Arms, or there's a company that makes something that's close enough that we can't use it. And I think there's a Maxima that has like a
the
version
car
that's similar. Yeah. Well, but it
has
you're
to be
allowed to use
gun-related?
it if it's or it has to either be gun related, like manufacturing, or another thing that gets tripped up, and this is why they're looking at the laws, if somebody sells something that's similar. So it's really complicated. And so what we do is we come up with the name and we do an initial dive, and then we're like, oh, that sounds good. And then when we think we've got something, we get the lawyer involved, and unfortunately the lawyer typically comes back.
We're going to help you with this. Okay. Guys, down in the comment section, give us some names. Hey, if we get names in the comment section and you get to use it, do they get one?
Well, so let me speak to that. What I expect now, if somebody comes up with something we didn't think of, I will be surprised, and I'm sure we can work something out and have a little fun with that. The thing that I would challenge, and this is a literal challenge. I'll offer anybody this, and this will get you a Defiance sweatshirt, t-shirt, and hat if you can find this. And now I'm only going to check the ones that we haven't bothered with. We went through a number of names, not just for this action, but for several actions. We actually have a list that's very long of names that could possibly be used for Defiance actions. Because of how many times we found that the words were used by somebody else, I went through it and did pre-searches on every single word, and that list shrank down to like 8 words. And then those are the words that if we send that to the attorney's like, well, yeah, you don't see it on a preliminary search, but when you do one of these deep dives and look for any conflicts, then they don't have it. So it's not coming up with the right word. I could come up with a lot of words that I would like for it. It's one that's actually not covered up in some other kind of trademark issue. So what probably will happen is it'll end up, we're talking about switching to a new naming protocol, I guess, where we use, because it is a deviant, that is the base model. So we use deviant, and then it's like a dash something else, like a dash comp or dash C or something other thing. And so we haven't really sorted that out. And this all, that again, in releasing these in a very deliberate way, we're not getting out ahead of ourselves too much. We wanted to make sure we had a good product first. We wanted to make sure it works. And then we worry about the simpler stuff like naming, which turns out to be not simple at all. But the thing that ends up being critical about that is if we're allowed to use it. And so I would encourage people to put names in the comments just for us to see if you could come up with names that we hadn't seen before. And that I will comment on. I've learned to stay out of the comment section for my own benefit, and maybe for the benefit of the company.
I try to tell you.
Oh, you and Gary straightened me out. Yeah, you and Gary straightened me out. I will do better in the comment section. But if somebody points out a word that we hadn't used before, I will let you know that is a new word to us, because Eric, if I could tell you how many times we spent looking at a list of silly words, it's remarkable how difficult that is.
Yeah, so, I can imagine.
So there's the two new products.
People wonder why my stuff is called V1, V2, V3 because it's the easy tuner that one's done, right? And if we just call it V1, V2, V3, it's easy to identify them, and it's simple. And I know it's not very elaborate, it's not very splashy, but I tell you what, it makes things simple.
Well, and I suspect, I certainly don't know, but I suspect that you're going to see a lot of model names go that way because of how hard this is. They're going to use abbreviations or, as one fixed thing with it's just super tough. So the good news is, if you're interested in PRS shooting, Defiance now has an action that we've sorted it all out. We've picked the most popular handle, the most popular shroud. It's timed. Everything's tuned. It is ready to go for PRS shooting. Drop it in, start winning. There you go. So those are the two new products that are coming from Defiance. On the McMillan side, as far as new products goes, it's exciting from the perspective that we're actually applying a new approach at McMillan that's going to make things super interesting. The key thing regarding models that people should know about McMillan is that the vast majority of people who get McMillan stocks these days get one of four models. You've got the ELR Hunter, you've got both mountain trackers, and then you've got the Game Warden 2.0. Those four stocks are, it's probably fair to say 80%, 85% of all the stocks that we sell across the board. And now taking away Browning stocks, because Browning has a whole group of its own stocks that we make for Browning. So to the mass end shooter public, those are the four stocks that are being used by the vast majority of people. Now the stocks that are coming out, because what we're doing now is Varian has been very successful at partnering with folks out in the community, in the industry, who are motivated and very knowledgeable about what makes a stock comfortable and work well in their particular world. And we're working with those folks to develop new concept designs and new different products, because the thing about McMillan is we already have the stock heart figured out. The soul of a combat rifle, the soul of a combat stock is already there. Now we just need to make it fit people in a way that they're interested in and comfortable with. And so in our best approach, we believe, is to connect with knowledgeable shooters and knowledgeable users of these products and have them point us in a direction that's going to be exciting. So now we've already made that change some time ago. And so the stocks that are be a result of that, you're going to start seeing those stocks come out next year. We're at the end of this year, so next year in 2026, and I'm very excited about where that's going. We also have a cool couple of new projects that I won't get too into, but McMillan is I think when people, if they watch this video when it comes out 3 years from now, they'll look back, and when I say that you're going to be surprised about what McMillan's up to over the next 3 years. 3 years from now, when you look back, you're like, okay, I see what he was talking about, because it's super interesting and super exciting. So that's the big one. And then for the big burger announcement, it's basically that I'm going to be talking a lot less about burger than I have in the past. I don't have any secret insight. I'm not in contact with burger anymore like I was. It's funny how many people have started reaching out to me to ask me things about burger, and I don't know anything. I don't know what's going on over there. Capstone's doing its own thing. Burger's doing its own thing. I wish them the best. And so that was just something funny. It was more funny than anything because it was the fact that we had talked so much about Burger that prompted a lot of folks to really reach out to me and they're asking me questions about it. And I became a source for that kind of thing. And so I just want people to understand that I'm with McMillan and Defiance now. Burger's a great company. They do great things. I was very proud of my role in that. And I'm still proud of what they do as a product. So that's the big Burger announcement.
One last question. Why the yellow box?
Oh, yeah. You know what? So Walt picked it because at the time there was Ed Watson, Ali Huber. So Ed Watson was red. Ali Huber was, I think he was blue or green. Might have been blue. There were like 6 or 8 premier bench rest bullet makers. That's all Walt cared about. He didn't even raise an eyebrow over Sierra or Nosler. That never interested him. He was only interested in the bullet makers that made bench rest bullets. And there was like 6 or 7 of those guys back then, and they all had a particular color. So when Walt decided he wanted to start selling stuff, really yellow was about the only color left. So he picked yellow. So that's what it's been. And so it wasn't even a matter of like him liking yellow, or I always thought yellow was good because boy, it pops out on a shelf pretty quick. It really does. I thought that was it. It was just it was the color that was left. And people back then will know what I'm talking about, because back you could tell what somebody was shooting by the color of the boxes on their bench.
To this day, yeah.
Well, I don't know how prevalent it is now, but back then it was a big part of that group. So
yeah. All right, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the last Burger question he's going to answer, and he answered it here.
Answered it, yeah, that's right. I started it up and ended it here on Fortiva Podcast. So,
all right, man, I appreciate you being on.
Thank you
for all the information that you have brought to us, because it's important for me and our viewers to understand the different things that you guys are doing and the different purposes, and hopefully that'll make it a lot easier to navigate your website. I'm terrible at navigating websites. But yeah, I see we're talking. I did a quick search on McMillan, and yeah, it's even got an option to build your own. So you guys offer a lot of flexibility, which is obviously a good thing, especially if you're building that once in a lifetime rifle.
And I'll button up with one thing that I mentioned earlier. I obsess over what we're doing wrong. I can't help myself. So all these things that people experience, they say, I wish McMillan didn't do this, or I wish Defiance didn't do that. If I don't know about it, if I know about it, we're already working on it. If I don't know about it, I would encourage you to share your perspective with me, because I want to work on it. We are constantly working on the things that people find frustrations with, and we will improve them. So as time goes on, the thing that I'm excited about is we already have the quality product. Now we just have to be better at talking about it, because it is a premium product. It is among those few products, those few brands. I don't care what's popular. I care about what's good. And what's good, people know what's good, because what's good may not be makeable in vast volumes. You know, it might not be, somebody might not be great at marketing. I know of a particular company I went head to head with for a very long time in another life that's exceptional at marketing. And I think a lot of people like their product, but I think a lot of people, especially at the competitive level, would say that they're not excited about using their product in competition. And so that's the stark contrast. Just because we're not good at explaining what we do doesn't mean that we're not good at doing what we do. And so keep that in mind. That's an important perspective when you're thinking about, I'm going to spend this much money on a quality rifle. Do I want to get it from the place that looks fancy, or do I want to get it from the place that doesn't know how to drive around in a sexy car with a blonde on their shoulder, but boy, they know how to make actions and they know how to make stocks? And that's probably a weird way to put it.
I'm sure I could figure it out.
Yeah. Right on. Something like that. I come up with shit. I say stuff. Sorry about that.
Eric, thanks for being back,
right,
brother.
Yeah,
and thanks for everything you guys do and the explanation to your products. That's been very helpful.
All right.
That's
thanks,
it.
Eric. All right.
Keep them centered.